Earnestly podcast. First time guest on the show. We got social commentator, Torrey M. Should I call you social conservative commentator or just commentator? I mean, do you go big on labels or what? Do you care?
I don't go big on labels. At one time, I was the non-hyphenated American, but you can just, social commentator is fine. Conservative first, Republican.
Yeah.
Just.
Wait. So you are a registered Republican or are you libertarian? Because
that's a good question. So I am a registered Republican.
Right.
Fiscally Republican, socially libertarian to a degree. Right. Now the Libertarian Party has a lot of work to do if they want to get some of us on the center right over. They get a little bit eccentric with their convention. Yeah. So I'm not that far out, but conservative, right? Conservative libertarian, leaning that way.
I was thinking about too, like as preparing for the show, like this is about 2 years coming. Doing this, like we discussed about maybe doing a podcast together at some point down the road, and we said we'll do it, and then finally get doing it tonight. And I'm trying to remember.
I appreciate it.
I was trying to remember, like, okay, so we've been talking about 2-ish years, whatever, on Twitter, and I'm thinking, how do we meet again? How do we link up? I know it's a love for wrestling, definitely.
Was.
But I think it was actually I love Michael Jackson. Actually,
you do, and I do.
That's what it was. Because I think I posted something on MJ back in 2020. I think it was, and I think you would responded to me on that, and then you started following me. And I followed you back and realized that not only you were MJ fans, but also big wrestling fans too. Notably AEW.
Notably,
yeah, it's in your profile. And of course,
yes,
politics too, and I love politics.
Yes,
I get down like that. So I was trying to remember. Okay, how we meet again? And then I'm like, oh wait, it was Mike. It was Mike. That's what it was.
Bringing people together, MJ.
You're damn right, man. I mean, look, my oldest son, his middle name, and his middle name is Jackson for a reason. Just letting you know.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So yeah, so like back at the top of the show, people talk about you're conservative, libertarian. Explain to the folks what a libertarian is actually, because I think a lot of people get a little bit in the weeds about what exactly it means. Like I know there's definitely a libertarian bent, a conservative bent with libertarians, but there's also, as you said, a little bit of the eccentric thing. I mean, a lot of the social liberal, backdrop to that. Explain what libertarian is to you and what it actually is.
Yeah, so for me, libertarianism is, the federal government that governs least governs the best. So I think a lot of conservatives also feel the same way. The federal government was formed to do some specific things, promote general welfare, protect the borders, protect a strong national defense. But outside of that, it's really up to the states to kind of govern themselves, which I think is kind of a time-tested policy in America. And I think libertarians really lean heavy on that and self-governance and self-regulation, really the power of the individual. In some cases, I think that's really important. I think the federal government has gotten way, way too big just in the intervention in people's lives. I think it's just out of control. I think that.
No, go ahead.
No, so I just think that, and a lot of conservatives, unfortunately, the Republican Party has kind of grown to this big, large-ass government party on the other side. So I think there's a soft middle there for libertarians. Some of the social libertarian policies with regards to like drugs and social things like that, I don't necessarily get down with. And they're also isolationists when it comes to things like foreign policy, which I think can be dangerous in today's world. But by and large, if we're talking about just overall, I think that the libertarians, at least from a social standpoint, have the right track for most Americans.
Now, have you always been conservative your entire life, or are you give me a little bit of your journey about that? Like
I appreciate the question. So as long as I followed politics, I think I've always innately been a conservative, just because we're a binary culture basically when it comes to politics. You either you're pro big federal government or you're pro small federal government, to break it down in basic terms. And I've always been a believer in the self. I've always believed the bigger, growing up, how I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And I had a kind of a rough childhood, but I was able to make it. And I did get help along the way. And I under no means do I believe that, people should be left to themselves. I do think there's a role in life for federal government. And government in and of itself. But do I think that government should run your life from cradle to grave? No, I do not. Do I think that there's more power in the individual than there is in the collective? In many cases, there are. I think that people in a community can be left to govern themselves, can be left to learn from each other, and can be left to help each other. I think we do a better job on a micro level than we do on a macro level. What works in Florida doesn't necessarily work in New York and doesn't necessarily work in California. So I think that as far as conservatism goes, there's a lot of common sense things that I think if people were to remove labels, that we'd all agree on. So unfortunately, politics is really toxic right now.
I agree with you
and
with
there's
that.
labels and things. But if we took the labels out, I think a majority of Americans believe the same. They just kind of want to be left alone.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we ask most people in this country, like take away the blue-red thing and all that stuff about basic common sense policy stuff. I would dare say you'll get about 3/4 of agreement on most things. In fact, you probably get more than that. I think where the issue comes in, from what I've seen through my years of following this stuff for decades, is just the how to get there, the way to get there. I think that's where you have all the fracturing. My I don't know if you know my journey. I was also raised conservative. A lot of it was church, foundation, of course. I was a Republican until 2008.
Okay.
Because the last time I voted for Republican in the presidential race was George W. Bush in 2004 for re-election. And then obviously the Iraq War and what we found out after the fact, left a really, bad taste in my mouth. And even then, I still consider. And even then, when I left the party in 2008 before the 08 election between Obama and McCain, I still considered voting for McCain at the time. So I voted for McCain in a primary in 2000 against Bush. And then once you added Sarah Palin, I was like, I'm out. So. Admittedly, I've probably moved more left as I've gotten older. I still consider myself very much a moderate. I would say I'm still fairly fiscal conservative. I believe in small. I don't know if I can believe in small government, but I definitely believe in smaller government or less government. And state rights. I do see the value in state rights, of course, too, also as well. I think depending on the issues, though, is where I start to get a little more. Okay, well, which issues are we talking about here exactly? And it gets a little muddy when it's talking about federal funding and all this kind of stuff, but that's where I'm at now. Like I'm definitely, I will say I'm definitely a social liberal now more than I've ever been as I've gotten older. Seeing the world from my own eyes and everything else. But I do think it's important to still have these conversations, whether or not you agree or disagree with someone else. I don't like gaslighting. I don't like people who get into this thing just to gaslight. Are you having productive conversations? Because we got to share this country. Whether or not you agree, disagree with this, not, we got to share this country, and we need to figure out, compromise here and there and whatnot. So I think there's still value in the conversation with people that you may disagree with, even slight disagreements in politics, whatnot.
No, you're absolutely right. I absolutely agree 100%. I think social media has really, unfortunately, like you said, just lit a flame under a lot of conversations now don't happen. We don't talk. We're talking past each other. Right. We preach to the choir. Like you said, I'm on Twitter a lot, so follow me at Torrey M.
I love your tweets.
And thank you, man.
I love you. I get into that I still like the tweets, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just in good fun, but certainly debate and discussion is what made this country great. We're never going to always agree on things, and I think that's okay. I think one thing that we have lost along the way is the ability to listen to each other. You don't have to be wrong for me to be right. I don't have to be wrong for you to be right. We can agree to disagree on things. You have different perspectives. You have different ideas. I have different ideas. And there was a time in this country where we could talk about those things, reach a consensus. We could reach compromise, or we could just agree to disagree. And unfortunately, a lot of that is gone. So like you said, liberal, conservative, independent, libertarians, everybody has great ideas. Everybody has good feedback. Everybody has their own perspectives. And somewhere along the way, we've lost the ability to talk to each other and to listen to each other and to acknowledge each other, because I think that's one thing that is important. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that we've lost when we're talking about anything really, politics, social politics, the economy, abortion, mm-hmm. gay and trans rights. I mean, all of those things, there's perspectives from all different sides. And at one point we were able to talk about those things and come to a consensus, or at least acknowledge each other's feelings. And we don't do that anymore. And that's sad.
Are you mixed? Are you mixed race, or are you?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm biracial.
Oh, so mom black, mom white? What?
Mom's white, dad's black. Yeah, no, that's fine.
No, I'm not mixed, but I'm definitely light skinned. But people look at you, they'll definitely see they're definitely black in you. Do you ever get like, because you don't get, I mean, especially in the last, I say 20 something years, you don't get a lot of like black conservatives, that are very out there, if you will. Unless you're in church, of course, but a lot of black conservatives who are very much, you get the whole, if you're a black conservative, you're
Uncle
Tom and then that. And
yes,
believe me, I got that a lot growing up. And,
I bet.
Well, in my case, I tell people to fuck off anyway, so I didn't give a crap. But do you get that stuff also?
Yeah, it's pretty, like you said, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's pretty toxic. There are a lot of black conservatives. And I think there are even more in especially like you said, in the black church and even in the black family. I think a lot, if you were to take away the labels like we talked about, I think you would see a lot more black conservatives, because the blacks can tend to be pro-family, tend to be pro-individuality, pro-small business. A lot of the tenements that conservatism holds ring true in the black families. Unfortunately, again, we get to this label thing where and now you have politicians and businesses and people who are profiting off of us bickering and not want to listen to each other, and that's sad. But yeah, so I grew up, it was tough. Being biracial in the 70s was difficult, even up through the 80s and 90s. I was too black to hang out with white kids. I was too white to hang out with the black kids. So trying to find a place was really difficult. So I think that's where I kind of learned a lot of that individuality and just kind of listening to myself. So I formed a lot of opinions that way. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I have found, unfortunately, as far as racist comments and racist things come, a lot of it comes from the left. The people who are the most tolerant, who claim to be the most tolerant, tend to be the most intolerant. Either it's overtly racist or it's the soft bigotry, which is even worse. I get a lot of the, well, why do you think that way? Because, you're this, what I mean? It's like, why would I have to? Yeah. Why do you have to think a certain way because you look a certain way? That's the most offensive thing that somebody could say.
I get that now as someone who has voted Republican in 2 decades. I still get it now because I still have, if I push back on, say, Democrat policy, a Democrat, whether it be a policy or whatever, or criticism to the Democratic Party or liberal side stuff, I get that now. But look, we're not a monolith. I will use my brain to how I feel like, and people need to get over that. Seriously. So
and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's like we were saying, everybody and not everything has to be monochromatic,
Right.
You can feel one way about the economy that you may feel differently about social policies. You may be a little more flexible when it comes to gay marriage than you are about, a big tax break for rich folks or, trickle down economics. You might feel a certain way about intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan and Ukraine, and you might feel a little bit different about abortion. And it's okay. You're allowed to have different ideas and different thoughts on different subjects. It's just somewhere along the line, we just like, okay, you're a Democrat, so you have to think this way. And if you don't think this way, you are racist, homophobic, xenophobic, you're getting labeled all of a sudden. Like, what happened to the time when we could just talk about things and be like, you know what? I disagree with you, but you know what? I appreciate where you're coming from. I appreciate your insight, and we can disagree, and that's okay. We can still be friends at the end of the day.
Right.
It's only going to make us better people the more we talk and the more we listen. Yeah.
So I want to ask you this though: what is the future of the GOP? Like this party has gone through a massive, not in the last 10 years. I mean, with Trump, but even I would say the last 20 years. Like, I mean, they lost to me in 2008, obviously for some obvious reasons. But I never thought at any point after 2008 that we would get to the point where we're at now, with the party being where it's at now. And I'm confused because I know I don't want to get into the tank of like, okay, so if you're a Republican, therefore you take on all the Republican shit. So if you're a Republican, you take on all the baggage, and the same with the liberals. They do the same on the right hand side. With like, if you're a liberal, you take on all the left shit. That's all yours. That's not how it works. And this is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem why this is why I don't like a two-party system to begin with. I think we should have ranked choice voting. I think we should have more parties involved in the process. Which I'll ask in a second. Where do you stand on that? Are you open to more parties at the forefront to have more diversity of thought and more diversity?
I am. The binary system that we exist in right now, I think just reading the tea leaves is starting to kind of crack. You had the 2008 with the Obama. The Obama phenomenon just took politics to another level. Actually, I mean, you could go back to 2000, really. If you think about the Bush-Gore election, that really started a fissure that I think, just kind of branched out. And then you had the Iraq War, and then you had, all that stuff that went on. And then you had Obama come along, and it became this larger-than-life personality. And then, politics stopped being about policy. It started becoming about personality and pizzazz and showmanship and, articulate and all this kind of stuff. And then when the Obama policy started, not benefiting the American people the way that I think people thought it would, you had a Donald Trump come along. Well, then you had Hillary, and you had all that issue. And, I mean, the Clintons,
that's a whole other can of worms, trust me.
Right. But then Donald Trump became the right's Barack Obama. He was a showman. He was a larger than life personality, but he was saying all the right things for the right. So the right beget Trump the way the left beget Obama. And so now we've just catapulted into this like stratosphere of, it's not even about politics anymore. It's just about, showmanship and stardom and fame. And I think that it feels like with this upcoming, because you asked me about, the future of the Republican Party, so I can kind of tie it in. Now, I can't speak for the GOP. Of course. I would never be that.
But you're a constituent, though, so you have a voice, and you arrive at an opinion.
As a constituency of the party, I do believe there's probably, I know the loud minority right now is the MAGA minority, I guess you could say, because it's about 30%, I think, of the party.
That is one, yeah.
They're probably the loudest voice right now, but I do think that there are a lot of young conservatives who are not necessarily beholden to a candidate. I think there's a hunger for the cause, and there's a hunger for a return to fiscal sanity, strong national defense, but not necessarily like this big industrial complex military thing that people talk about all the time. I do think that there's just a return of common sense.
So you agree that the Republican Party has been taken over by MAGA? You agree with that?
I don't know that. I think taking over, is too strong. Has it been even hijacked is kind of a strong word, but I do think that I do think that there is a solid base in the Republican Party, and it might just take this cycle to kind of cycle itself out. But I do think there is a solid base in the party that is just latched on to the Trump movement, that I believe that they kind of let go of the things that make conservatism what it is. So it concerns me as a conservative. And like you said, you talked about expanding to different parties. There might be a middle ground for somebody to come in that could get some people center right and center left and kind of put them together. Maybe. I don't know.
There's certainly been attempts of that through many years in the politics. Like in the last 20 years, we've had the Reform Party. We've had, obviously, the four parties of late with Andrew Yang and I think David Frum was part of that. And, we've had some attempts of splintering and whatnot. But it's definitely it's definitely a different party. And the thing I keep telling folks is this: the MAGA base isn't just your typical conservatives and evangelicals. A lot of those folks in the MAGA base are actually disenchanted Democrats or disenchanted liberals who feel left behind.
So what I think what has happened, and I know you follow me on social media, and one of the threads that I've kind of carried for the last couple of years is that you have with the Trump thing, it's interesting because you have this dynamic where you've got, like you said, there's probably a solid 25-30% of Republicans who are just Trump people, right? They're not going to go anywhere. Those are Trump folks. You've probably got so that's another 50-60% of the party who are, up for grabs, but basically, not going to vote Democrat, but they're just going to vote for the party, right? Some of those people are getting pushed into the MAGA pool by the left, by the media, by everybody else. They are making Trump out. And I've said this before. I honestly believe if we'd have just left alone, if just left well enough alone, I think the Trump phenomenon would have started to fade out by itself. Maybe not this cycle, but there are enough Republicans and conservatives and people who I interact with who I think, as we talk, feel like, you know what, if we'd have just let this thing happen naturally, a lot of us would have just, would just move on and been fine. But what happens is because Trump is so vilified, right? And he just enrages the media and the left. And, there's all these indictments and things like that. All you do is just fuel the fire because he goes out there and says, you see what they're doing to me? They're going to do this to you. They're doing this to us or whatever. And it just drags those people back in that go, yeah, I hate the system. And the system's just picking on this guy. Never mind the fact that even if a shred of what he did is illegal or not, that's for the courts to figure out. Yeah. But you start to look and you go, they're really, really piling on this guy. And there are people who are just going to go, you know what? I want to get him back in just so I can see what happens, just chaos theory, just to see him go after the other people.
And to your point, that's one of my fears about after 2016 when we got elected was that, the whatever liberal media, CNN, whatever maybe, at some point you can martyr this guy. You martyr this guy. You make him more of a sympathetic figure. There is room for that. That's how I always tell people, there's no need to go overboard Trump. Just stick to the facts. If you believe he's did something illegal and that, stick to the facts. Don't need to go overboard and be over the top. Just over the top with it. Just go with what you think is wrong. Stick with that, and if that is the case that plays out, run it that way. And as you said, the cycle will play out. But I think the over coverage of him, both sides, but really on the left side of him, in a lot of ways, have martyred him in a lot of ways.
There is such it's almost irrational. There's such an irrational fear of Donald Trump, the politician or whatever, whatever we went through in 2016 and all that. I've never seen somebody who draws such fervor and anger and, from so many people. And like you said, on both sides. Yeah. And so, all it does when they continue to just pile on and pile on and pile on, you're like, okay, all you're doing is you're just stoking people who are just on the fence, and they're like, you know what, I got to go with this guy because you're all picking on him, and
right,
now we're not having substantive debates anymore, and I feel bad for the candidates on the GOP field because I think on paper we have a really strong group of candidates who would be great executive leaders.
Who do you like?
There's no oxygen in the room.
Well,
I like a lot of different ones for. Yeah, I like a lot of different ones. Obviously, I live in Florida and I'm from Florida, so I was a DeSantis guy. I mean, I still am. I think he's a great governor. I think he's done a great job. I think a lot of the attacks on him have been a little ridiculous, and I think that they've, he was Donald Trump Jr. before Donald Trump,
But you don't think
sucked up all the oxygen in the air.
You don't think what DeSantis though? Look, there was a point 2 years ago I actually did consider voting for him for governor for re-election. Okay. There was a point I actually started to, because I actually praised him after COVID. I was very vocal on this podcast about that. I wasn't a DeSantis guy, but I praised him for what he did with teachers here, teachers raises. I praised him for the environment. He did better than Rick Scott on the environment. So, like I said, I'm measured by this kind of stuff. But then the woke stuff. Woke.
Right.
That's too much. I don't want to hear about it. The same way where we criticize the left for being so woke and him doing anti-woke things. Enough already. Policy, and I don't hear enough of that from DeSantis. And I think and now that he's gotten, he's on getting national coverage now he's running president, people are seeing that, well, this guy is very awkward, and also all he has brought to the table is he's the anti-woke guy. And to me, that's not enough.
It's not, and unfortunately, and that's one of the drawbacks to it's been rather disappointing for the DeSantis campaign is that,
Right.
and it's one of the things that I've said. You've got to stop saying the word woke. It's lost. It's whatever meaning it might have had.
Yeah.
It's kind of lost. You're throwing woke at everything, and if there's like you're saying, if there's substantive debates about what you want to teach in schools and things like that, then spell it out in policy, right? Say, okay, this is what's in the policy. This is why we believe that this is wrong. And this is why we believe that there's a better way to teach it. Not just to say, we're not going to be beholden to woke this, and we're not going to be beholden to woke that. The word has lost its meaning. It's just a word now. And the more you saturate the airways with the word, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, everything is woke now, like everything. So what does that mean? I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? So like you're saying, you get to the point where you're like, you got to be more substantive. I think there's a hunger and a thirst in the country for real substantive, common sense policies. And I think if somebody could just, make that their platform, but unfortunately we're in the 21st century, 24-hour media cycles. Everybody's got to get hits. Everybody's got to get likes and clicks, and the two figureheads of each party, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, are both wackadoos, right? It's but they get all the attention, they get all the media, they get all the press. So even like the Democrats, RFK, and guy can't get any traction.
Yeah, look, I think RFK is a nut job, but he should have a platform. He shouldn't be deplatformed just because his policies. In fact, I would argue part of the reason why I started drifting from RFK Jr. is because when he went on Rogan's podcast, I actually listened to his podcast and disagree with him. When you start deplatforming guys, like whatever it may be, you make it more curious and more suspect that, okay, so why are you not letting him talk? So now I have to figure this out now for myself. Why? Let him speak.
It does. It has the adverse effect. I mean, the more you try to silence people, the more curious people are going to get to try to hear it, and it just has the reverse effect. Let people talk. Let them, if they're saying crazy things, let them say crazy things, and let people figure it out. Trust the American people to figure out, hey, this doesn't make any sense, or hey, I have questions. There was a time in this country where we used to ask questions.
Right, and that way there's no way there's no spin. That way you don't you got to spin anymore. I hear it for myself, and now I can decide as a consumer, as a voter. Yeah, you're full of shit. Or I like you, and that's it. Let me decide for myself.
Yeah. And let the chips fall where they may. Right.
I'm not a Democrat, so but I think if he's polling at 20% at the party, and Williams is polling at near 10%, Joe Biden, in my opinion, should be primaried. I felt the same about Trump in 2020 when Joe Walsh and Dustin Amash were polling semi decent. He should have been primaried. I mean, again, I'm not part of the party, so I can't necessarily sit there and complain about it because I don't have any impact on that. But I think I'm of the opinion that if every voice, democracy should be heard, that people should be able to have their voices heard. That I am pro democracy in that across the board. I don't give a shit what party it is.
And it would it would bolster. I mean, if you're concerned about Joe Biden, the candidate from the Democrat, I mean, if I'm a Democrat, if I'm a left leaning voter,
and there are Dems that are very
and I'm a Biden, and if I'm a Biden guy, I want to hear him debate. I want him to debate RFK. I want him to debate Williamson. I want him to get out there and sell what he's done the last 4 years and be able to, I mean, he hasn't really done very much, to be honest, between you and me, but he should at least be able to sell to his party. This is the platform. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we hope to accomplish. And he should be able to do that in his own party. The more you try to hide him, the worse it looks, right? The more you stifle the conversation, the worse it looks. And the same for Trump. I would say the same thing to the right and the MAGA people. Trump should be out there every day debating. He should, what? There's a debate coming up in a week. I will be there center stage. I'll tell you everything I did those 4 years. I'll tell you everything I'm going to do the next 4 years. I'll tell you why all these all these indictments are silly. I'll tell you why, the impeachment stuff was silly. I just get out there and hammer it home and knock your opponents out of the ring. Saying that you're not going to do it because you don't want, that just looks bad. I
disagree that the whole Biden thing hasn't done anything. I think he's done stuff. I just think he's done stuff that people don't agree with. He's done stuff. People just don't agree with it.
Okay, that's fair. Right. That's fair.
That's the different thing. But I think the biggest problem with Biden I have and the Democrats as a whole is why I think he should be primaried is the optics. It matters. I'm sorry. I don't give a shit. People say, oh, well, he's doing things. It doesn't matter. Optics matter. Optics matter. Yeah. The same Donald Trump. Optics matter.
Yeah.
So,
and now we're stuck now with these two.
Some of the guys 80-year-old, and Donald Trump's 278 now.
Something like that, yeah.
And
I think that, like you said, 70-80% of the country would just want to move on, but you don't have a choice.
So you were never a Trump guy, right? Like a Trump guy, like Torrey Spears. Torrey Spears has a chance to decide for himself. You know what? I'm going to pick the representative of the party that I want. It's not Donald Trump, right?
No. So I was a Ted Cruz guy in 16. So I was really excited for Cruz. Yeah. I was a Cruz guy. I voted for Cruz in the primary. I did vote for Trump eventually. When it came down to Trump and Hillary, it was that, hold your nose and vote. And at that time he was saying things that made sense. Not all the things, but just enough that was like, you know what? Okay, what have you got to lose? That was to me at that time in 16 was a great pitch. What do you got to lose? I was a Romney guy. I was a Cruz guy. I've been pretty loyal to the party.
I'm a big Romney guy, actually. I tell you what, I voted for Obama in 12, but if Obama wasn't on that ticket, there's a very good chance I'd vote for Romney in 2012. Yeah, he's very moderate.
He's been a little milquetoast now on the anti-Trump thing, but that's fine.
But that's the party. That's also the what do you call it, the reshaping of the party and politics.
It is. So we'll see where that goes. But no, I wasn't like a MAGA guy in 16. But he was at that point the lesser two evils. I voted for him in 20, obviously, because of I wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala. You look at the tail of the tape, right? Who matches up better? I've got to vote for one. But going into this election, I mean, me personally, as just a registered voter, man, this is like the first time in my life where I'm like, am I going to pull third party or just not vote for president? I mean, I don't know that I could vote for either one of these guys. I certainly can't vote for Biden because I don't support anything that he's done. But, if Trump is the guy, can I, as a voter, as an American, put the country through another 4 years of what we just went through? Can I do that in good conscience? I mean, is the positives of what I get going to outweigh the junk that we're going to get? So I'm really struggling with that.
So I'll ask you this. I'll answer your question. Although I answered this question in this podcast weeks ago because I did admit the Republicans I do like, actually. Is there a Democrat out there that you would, I'm not saying you vote for him, but you would say, you know what? I'm actually interested in this person, or whether or not he or she's running now, or even a Democrat in the last couple cycles that you say she's kind of sensible.
Wow. That's really hard. That's really hard because
I confess on the podcast that the Republican I liked actually that I actually saw on The View a couple months ago was Chris Sununu in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
I like him.
So it's hard for me because the Democratic Party, unfortunately, as a platform, as an entire movement, has moved so far radically to the left, and they cannibalize anybody that is left of center or even center. That, I mean, it's hard to find somebody that, again, we're talking about like common sense, like just rational common sense politicians. Right. That's what me as a voter am looking for. I've always said that if I could find a Democrat who espoused the same beliefs that I did about, a strong national defense, but low taxes, a limited federal government oversight, a common sense on things like climate change, common sense on things like social issues, willing to compromise. If I could find a Democrat who had those platforms, I would certainly entertain that as a candidate. Unfortunately, they're all like the whole party is so far left.
Would you say Bill Clinton was probably the last of that ilk that kind of represented that?
I think Bill Clinton was a savvy politician.
Yeah, he was
I don't know as far as I don't know what Bill Clinton believes. You know what I mean? I think Bill Clinton read the tea leaves. I think after he got, I think after he got his clock cleaned in the midterms, he made the pivot to center. The era of big government was over. I don't know that he necessarily believed that, or if it was just like, I got to preserve and protect my legacy. So
makes sense.
I don't know where he, you know what I mean? So, I mean, as far as, let me kind of answer your question. He probably was the last Democrat that I can think of. I mean, Obama was slick. See, because when he, like, you talk about being a shrewd and a good presentation politician, he was really, really smart about the way he presented himself and the way he presented his arguments. And it was only in like certain times he would say things and you would listen, you'd be like, well, wait a minute. Well, that doesn't jive with what you said earlier. Like, so which guy are we getting? You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I think a lot of people got wrapped up in the hysteria, and it's fine. I mean, when he was elected, I was like, hey, the country's progressed in a way that we've elected a black man as president. That's, regardless of what I might believe, or regardless of what I might, like or dislike about his platform or his policies or his politics, that's a cool thing. And I can acknowledge that. And I think that a lot of people acknowledge that. And then, of course, he governed way far left and just completely
which is weird because a lot of progressives actually find him disappointing.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that too. But again, we're talking about, like you said, in the last 20 years. I mean, we have gone from, we're just doing this, we're going so far away from each other. Like, the extreme is now the normal, and anything close to compromise is looked at as, it's not just you being wrong anymore. Now you're wrong and you're all these labels. It's I don't know how we get back to center. It's going to be tough.
I think, I think I'll say, I know I mentioned earlier in the podcast, but I think ranked choice voting is one way to go. More voices, more platforms, more ideas. Because again, I don't believe in this whole idea where if you're red and you have certain leanings in one way, that you take in all the Republican stuff and that all that stuff that you own, negative, positive, is all yours, and vice versa. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's stupid.
No, it's true.
Honestly, I think it's ridiculous.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
That's why I'm open to ranked choice voting, and I think once you start, because I firmly believe if you took the Democratic Party alone right now, you can really create 4 parties out of Democrats. I think you can take out 3 to the same amount of fraction, same about 3 or 4 parties out of the GOP side as well too. Between libertarians, of course, number one, obviously the MAGA side, and of course the I get it, So I don't know, man. So like you mentioned DeSantis, like is someone you say did like initially, but now you kind of Or is there someone else running, a Pence, a Christie, Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, that you like? Kind of interested in that one.
So far for right now, Haley and Scott are probably
Tim Scott.
Haley, Scott, and Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, and DeSantis will probably be like they're jockeying for my primary vote right now between the 3 of them. I kind of like Vivek. I like his presentation. I don't know that I agree with all of his takes on things. So
very
I'm really
too. Very Obama-ish too. His little vibe.
He is.
Buttigieg
he is.
type.
Yeah. He is. I mean, he's interesting, and I like that we have a diverse group. I'm really interested to hear the first debate because I think it'll really start to kind of shake out where I'm going to land. I'm probably 80-90% confident it won't be Trump. You
think so?
I'm just tired, man. I'm just over it.
Despite the polling, because he's dominating the polling right now.
Despite the and listen, if he ends up being the guy, he may be the guy. You know what I mean? And I'm speaking from kind of where I am now, and I felt the same way in 2016. He wasn't my guy, and then I was a Cruz guy. So it was Cruz, and I just thought, if we get anybody else, I'll be okay with. But if it's him, okay, that's fine. We'll ride with it. I don't know that I could do that this time. I just don't know if I have it in me.
No, I get it.
I mean, it's too much.
I get it.
I would be hypocrite, and that's the thing. So I would be a hypocrite because I constantly go on about how the left is just completely lost its mind on some things, and the way that they just banter and argue and again, like we're talking about, no debate, no discussion. It's just name calling and bomb throwing and gaslighting and all that. He does the same thing. So it's hypocritical of me to be like, well, I can't support this party because I don't even hear your policies anymore because all you're doing is trying to upset me. And then I got my candidate, quote unquote, doing the same thing. Like that just, it doesn't.
So Trump was indicted for the fourth time. 2 days ago. This is the Georgia case, of course. To me, right. I've been saying for months on the show, this is the case I'm more interested in. To me, this is the case that could hurt him most. And because number one is there's he's on tape saying that he's looking for 11,000 votes, or how many votes he was looking for.
I do think that's a little out of context.
Yeah, could be.
Knowing what Trump says. So, like, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
When you hear, like, you got to take that in the Donald Trump voice, right? When he's like, I got to find 11,000 votes. He's not, in my opinion, when I heard that, he's not telling the guy to go find him 11,000 votes. He's saying in his Trump voice, I got to find 11,000 votes. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's not exactly like the most articulate politician. Like he has a very plain speech. Yeah, exactly. So I understand how that sounded. And when I first read it, I was like, man, that, but then you hear it in the context of the whole conversation. And he's like, hey guys, 11,000 votes. You got to find me 11,000 votes somewhere with all the stuff going on. You know what I mean? It's like he's like and he has his chance to defend himself in court. So I that's completely wrong.
And that's my point too. Also, I told my friend to the left this. He's like, no, he did this. Look, I believe he did that, but still, he's allowed due process too. Whether you hate the guy or not. Okay, right. Let's not change the rules here because you don't like someone. That's not how it works. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, look, I think he's definitely done some shady shit. He should be dealt with accordingly, but let the courts play it out.
Right.
That's
so simple. The worst thing is the one when he's on tape talking to the reporter, I guess, about the classified documents, and then he's like, I shouldn't show you this, but I mean, like, you can't. I mean, I heard he's like, oh no, I wasn't really sure. Come on, man. You can't. Come on.
Yeah.
You got to take the L on that.
Yeah, don't bullshit us. Exactly right. Come on now.
Take the L on that one.
But that's
Trump. You know what? I probably was showing somebody something I shouldn't have. I mean, I get it. You can't do that. He's got to defend. But yeah.
So you said that you're 80% sure that he will not be the guy next year to represent the party.
No. I'm saying I'm 80% that I couldn't support him.
Right.
And I don't know that I could vote for him.
Do you think?
I think. Yeah.
Right. Do you think? This will derail him?
No, I don't.
So I agree with you.
No, because he has such a solid base. And so what's happened is his 30% are not going anywhere, and it's only going to grow. Like I was saying earlier, what the left doesn't, I guess, seem to grasp, or they've just got that Trump derangement syndrome worked up so that they can't get past it. All they're doing is just adding to his base. Every time that they come out with an indictment, every time they come out with an article, every time they come out and call him all these things on TV and social media and stuff, it just takes all those people who were fringe people who were looking for something else, and they go, you know what? They just keep picking on this guy. I want to get him back in the office now. It's something stinks. And even if it's, like I said, even if it's all legit, the way that they present it and the way that they go about it is just galvanizing his base. So when you take that 30% that grows just enough, and then you dilute the other 60% with 11 candidates or whatever we have, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion at this point. He's probably going to be the nominee, unless, of course, he is indicted or something, or I'm not indicted, but if he goes through the process and is found guilty, then I don't know what happens. I mean, we're in uncharted waters at that point. You know what I mean? But I mean, it feels like it's probably going to be him.
So I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated more about the candidates below him, because obviously Trump's running away with it right now, because DeSantis is going to a nosedive now. He's through the polls. You got Ramaswamy gaining ground on him now. I saw a poll yesterday that Chris Christie now is polling higher than DeSantis in New Hampshire. Now, granted, that's his area, but still, that wasn't the case months ago. Now that is the case now. If Trump says, fucking him out, or whatever, say he's not out of the paint, who does MAGA coalesce behind then? Because my fear is DeSantis will be the guy that will end up being the next in line, but MAGA can't stand him now either, apparently.
Right.
So who will they coalesce behind this time?
I don't know. That it's a wild card at that point. I don't know. And that was one of the things too with the whole Trump movement is what we cannibalize our own, and that's part of the problem that I have with the Republican Party. Just not the party itself, but just the Republicans. We cannibalize ourselves so fast. Like, I mean, there's just no. The left, they do it too. Like they did it to Bernie, and they do it to RFK Jr. They're doing it to him. But you know what? At the end of the day, when it's one name, they just, they go lockstep and they go, you know what? They don't let perfect become the enemy of good. We will do that on the right. Like especially the hard right, the MAGA right. They're like, they attack DeSantis harder than the left does. So, you look at his poll numbers, you say, well, why is he sinking? Well, he's sinking because, some of it is self-inflicted. I can see that. But a lot of it is because the Trump people have done such an effective job, like tearing this guy down. I got relatives and people who live in Florida who loved DeSantis as governor, praised him, right, for 4 years, like you said, COVID and education, and he's this and that, and then it was, well, you have to wait your turn. It's Trump's time. Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? That became the thing. It was like it's like child's play. Like, wait your turn, damn it. What? You wait in line, kiss the ring. What are we doing? This isn't.
And that is shit you criticize the Democrats for doing the same thing, same bull's crap.
Exactly.
Which I can't stand also.
People are doing that for Hillary, right? They did the same thing to Hillary. They're like, oh, look at them. It's Hillary's turn. It's her chance to look at them all. And then they did the same thing. So I don't know that he's going to recover, at least on a national stage. Maybe not this time. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Right.
If it's not Trump, I don't know what happens.
And only that,
Biden probably gets elected.
Really. Right. And only that with DeSantis too. Also, he I hate to say it, he looks awkward. Like he's, and that matters. Again, optics matter. It does matter.
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't translate from his local and state platform to his. Because in 2020, you saw it. He blew away Florida, right? They were talking about Florida being purple. I think he won by 8 points or something. It wasn't
2022.
Yeah, 2022. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He won by 18 points. 19 points.
Was it even 8 points? Okay, yeah.
Right. 18
so, it wasn't even close. Yeah, I checked out.
But let me tell you what happened though, because you had people like me. Now, granted, I didn't vote for him ultimately, but you had people like me who did consider that. But he peeled a lot of Democrats too, also in his coalition, because of how he handled COVID. Again, folks were able to work and make money. So. Right. I think there was a false sense of, okay, well, if this is the case, then I can go ahead and put this onto a national platform. The problem is, though, you still, you start doubling down on the book banning. You double down on the woke stuff. And again, normal people like me, like you, don't give a shit about that stuff. We care about policy. What are you doing about policy?
I don't agree with the fact that I don't care about it.
But you know what I mean? Like,
it's important, but it goes back to what you said, like presentation. It's just the fact that every other word, it seems like, out of the DeSantis campaign is woke, and now that word has no meaning. Like, it has no weight. Everything is not woke, right? Even if it is, just labeling everything woke, it's just people just tune it out. You just tune it. Like, I don't even know. Like, I'm center right. And I hear, oh, this is woke and that's woke, and I'm like, I checked out. I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. So whatever he had for his platform has been lost to the message.
And I think that plus, I think the thing that really diminished, honestly, and once he went to the national platform, was that the abortion ban from 15 weeks, which I thought was fine, to 6 weeks. And you do that on a national platform,
right?
No. A lot of Republicans still are pro-choice.
Yeah,
7% of people in this country, that's a coalition of both Democrats and Republicans, are still pro-choice to some degree. Doesn't mean pro-abortion.
The Republicans are finding that out. and again, that's a whole issue. Like we said, we talked about.
Oh,
we don't have any room to discuss or compromise. Like there's the far extreme and then the far extreme, and both sides are not even willing to listen. It's just you're wrong, and you hate this and you hate that, and you're wrong. I mean, it's like,
that issue in itself. I tell you, I've had conversations with people in the past on both sides of y'all about that conversation, and believe me, it won't get contentious because I'm able to have a nuanced conversation about it. Yeah. But that conversation deserves more nuance it gets credit for.
For sure. And
that's the problem. And no one wants to have that conversation. This is why we are in the shit we are now, unfortunately.
For sure.
So
for sure.
Let me see other topics before we get you out of here. The GOP debate. That's in 2 weeks, right?
I believe so. I think it's next week, isn't it? It's the 23rd.
Really? That close?
Tonight.
I'm very. You know what's funny? Like, Trump should debate.
He should.
But I'll be honest with you, as someone who watches like this sport, I'm actually okay with him not debating because I want to see what the hell these guys are about. I'm really curious.
So what's going to happen?
Vivek and
what I think is going to happen. What my fear is, the first quarter of the debate is going to be about him if he's not there. They're going to ask all the candidates about him. They're going to make it about him whether he's there or not, and that's
and the pledge. And the pledge also. I got to pledge no matter who the nominee is to vote for.
Yeah.
That you know what's gonna happen. You can really write the script right now. Seriously, you can book it like a wrestling show. Seriously.
So I don't know how much policy we're gonna get in that, and with 11 people on stage, it's a mess. It's a mess. But it is what it is.
Yeah,
it's what we signed up for.
Yeah. Little wrestling talk. I mentioned on the show earlier. You're a big AEW guy. Now you are definitely AEW over WWE, right? That's definitely the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Explain that to me, please. Why?
Okay, so I'm 46. So I've grown up with wrestling since I was probably 6 years old, 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So my mom used to be a manager for the Days Inn. She was a night manager at the Days Inn in Sarasota. Mm-hmm. And Sarasota, Florida has Robarts Arena. It used to be a hotbed for Florida Championship Wrestling and NWA and the territories. So all the wrestlers used to stay at the hotel there, and when they would go wrestle Robar. So she got to meet some of them, and actually, you remember Hercules, the big change, Hercules Hernandez? Yep. Yeah. So they got to actually be friends. So he actually took me backstage to one of the events at Robar. So I'll never forget it. This is how I learned that wrestling was this funny story. It's how I learned that wrestling was booked. And so Robarts Arena, main event, Hercules Hernandez versus Chief Wahoo McDaniel, $25,000 bounty match, right? Mm-hmm. So we go backstage, and I'm getting to meet all the wrestlers. In fact, Paul Bearer, who used to be Percy Pringle III, so he's backstage. He calls me a young Jermaine Jackson wannabe. That's how he. Yeah. Can you believe
Did you have the hair and everything too?
I did. I had a little baby throw, and he was like,
he still has that shit too to this day. Yeah,
crazy. Ridiculous. So anyway, so we're backstage. I'm meeting all the wrestlers, and I'm getting excited because I'm like, Hercules, I'm like, you're gonna beat Wahoo McDaniel, right? And big, kind of out of shape, older Chief Wahoo McDaniel, and Hercules was in peak physical condition. I'm like, what are we gonna do with that money? You're gonna get $25,000. He's like, Torrey, I'm not gonna win. I'm like, oh, yes, you are. What are you talking about? Of course you're gonna win. You're gonna beat him. You're the best. And he's like, Torrey, I'm not gonna win. I'm like, whatever. He's just doubting it or whatever. So sure enough, we had to go out and watch the match. We watched it. He went out and lost. I was devastated, and that's when they had to explain to me that it was all. So anyway, that's how I learned that wrestling is what it was. So I grew up Florida Championship Wrestling, NWA, WCCW, AWA. So it's been ingrained in me, and of course WWF and WWE was the big thing. Right around probably the Attitude Era, the end of that, it started to get kind of crazy. Once WCW folded and WWF was the only game in town, they just kind of rested on their laurels, and the product just got kind of crazy. So I had always hungered for something with actual wrestling, right? Like, I mean, I like the sports entertainment part of it. I like the goofy wrestling and all that kind of stuff. But really, at my heart, I like technical wrestling. I like the Mexican luchadors, the strong style in Japan. So I like the different styles of actual wrestling, technical wrestling, and stuff like that. So when AEW came on, and you get to see not only young guys, new guys if you haven't seen before, but you see these guys doing these great things in the ring, tag team wrestling and 6-man tags and just the performances that they put on in the ring. It harkens back to those days when wrestling was wrestling and not just sports entertainment drama for grown men. So that's when I really I just bought in. I bought in to AEW from day one, and so I ride with them 100%.
So I have to give AEW credit here too, because you probably don't know my story, but I've been a fan for decades also too, since '87. I'm 43.
Okay.
So I was a WWE guy from day one.
Sure.
But I got WCW at some point as I got older, especially when Hogan left and went there in the mid late '90s. But I, like you said, after Attitude Era, after Hogan Rock at Mania 18, I stopped for 17 years. I just stopped. AEW brought me back to wrestling as a whole, really. So while I'm watching WWE also too today as well, Vince can credit Tony Khan for bringing me back in the first place, because I was checked out of wrestling in general. I mean, look, I would watch all the old stuff always because I'm a mark that way. But it wasn't until AEW came in 2019 that I started to become more curious about the new promotion, and then by then I started watching WWE again, and I got back into both promotions. And for a while, even on my wrestling podcast, I got called an AEW mark for many years. I've cooled off AEW recently because I think some of the booking they've done recently has been ridiculous. I think some things there's some things I wish they could do better. I still watch both. I watch both.
Yeah.
But I go like with promotions, I go back and forth. Like one day I'm like AEW more than AEW, and the next time,
that's fair.
Right. But I do like AEW for the most part. I think they have a good opportunity here to do something really, really good in a way that WCW couldn't do. They bring something different to the table. But I wish they would do a little more sports entertainment-ish stuff to some degree. Because again, at the end of the day, for me, to keep my attention, this is what WWE is winning with me right now, is storytelling. Storytelling still matters, and not just in the ring, but also out the ring. This is why this Bloodline storyline is the greatest storyline I've ever seen in wrestling history, even with Mega Powers. So
really better than NWO.
And I think so, because NWO
really
NWO fell apart. NWO
in its peak.
Well, NWO the first 2 years.
Bash at the Beach '96 is like that was like the quintessential when Hogan turned heel and Holland. That changed the business forever. I mean, that was a watershed moment, even bigger than Hogan Andre, bigger than WrestleMania 1. That moment changed wrestling.
It changed my life because here's the thing. I am one of the biggest Hogan. Hogan's my all-time favorite. Well, Macho first, but Hogan now. But growing up in that time, Hogan's my favorite wrestler of all time. Number 2 now. When Hogan turned heel, it took a whole day to process that for me, because I said, I don't believe this. It took watching Nitro the very next night, and him doubling down. That, yes, I'm the bad guy now. Throwing Rey Mysterio into the trailer. Like, oh, he is bad. So I had to make a decision about, am I going to stick with Hogan, and I did, because I'm a Hogan disciple. So I've been a Hogan fanatic since 1987. And it's one of those things where like it was life changing, because I never cheered for the heel until then.
Yeah.
So it was life changing for me as a wrestling fan, of course. But to me, the NWO after '98, when they split up to the Wolfpack, I hated the Wolfpack Hollywood thing.
A lot of us
I think it was idiotic. And by then I checked out WCW at that point. I was like, you know what?
It got too big too fast.
Yeah, and I checked out. So to me, the Bloodline storyline is compelling cinema. It's 3 years running now. They're doing it with Roman as a bad guy, which is amazing too, especially. And I'm the biggest Savage Hogan mark on the entire planet, and I think this is better than the Mega Powers storyline.
Okay, that's fair. I follow it kind of cursory. I mean, I follow it online. I watched, I think it was, what's the last pay-per-view? SummerSlam? I didn't watch SummerSlam, but the one before that I watched.
Money in the Bank.
Bit of the pay-per-view. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that just to kind of catch it. I watch Raw every now and again, but
what's wrong with WWE now? What are they? What's there's no connection there? What's going on there?
Yeah, so for me, it's like, well, number one, there's so much content, right? I mean,
that too, yeah.
Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday night. It's just, there's so much content between that, social media, and then trying to, it's too much, right?
I agree.
I'm also, 40, I'm a grown man, right? Like there's only so many hours in the day you can allocate to sports entertainment. So you have to kind of pick and choose. But for me, I mean, it just, it got a little bit too sports entertaining, not enough wrestling. Like for me, like, I mean, I like I mean, at one time NXT like was really, really when they had Gargano and Adam Cole, and it had, I mean, like they were putting on banger matches, right? Like in their pay-per-views at Bobby Roode and like some of those pay-per-views that were just as good, if not better, than the main stage, because those guys really, like, you could tell they cared about the craft. A lot of the guys once they get called up, they either get misused or some of the storylines are really silly. It just lost me as a casual fan. It's like, I don't have time to invest in this when there's a product that I like that gives me kind of both, right? It gives me kind of the goofiness, Best Friends and Sue's van. And I mean, I love that. That Darby Allin and Sting. I mean, that was right. That's just like the greatest moment, because it was just like something you'd never seen before.
Right. And they need to continue leaning into that kind of stuff too, because that's what hooks me. All those things hook me, So,
Luchasaurus, 65 million-year-old wrestler. Like, what? How do you explain that to somebody? But the guy can go in the ring, which is so great.
Yeah. Are you excited about the big Wembley show?
For All In, yeah.
I mean, right, All In.
Yeah, All In. Yeah.
Wembley.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So, I mean, MJF is really coming to his own. Yeah. As a performer, as a wrestler. I mean, he's great in the ring, but I mean, he is just like catapulted himself into the stratosphere of like all-time greats. Jericho is obviously an all-time great. I mean, these guys are like on the precipice. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I gotta admit, MJF's title reign has been kind of meh. The title reign has been kind of meh.
Really?
I really enjoyed the reign. He's my favorite in the whole company. Yeah. But the title reign has been kind of he was better in the chase mode.
I think they've done a really good job. What I feel like they've done is elevated the title on him, right? So like, I mean, I do miss the days when it was like, every Wednesday be like, hey, this coming up Wednesday is a title match. You're like, oh my God, I can't miss Dynamite because there's a world title match.
Right.
I miss those days when it was like every week was almost like you can't miss the following week. But at the same time, like that guy's he's just operating on another level right now. He is just everything he says is on fire. Everything he does, he's a face, he's a heel. You don't know whether to root for him, to cheer him. I mean, the guy is he's just next level right now.
I'll say this: he's the best on the stick in the entire industry.
At his age too. Can you imagine?
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's only going to get seasoned.
Right. So, I totally agree with that.
But
you're gonna say, go ahead.
No, I'm good. No, I'm really happy for the promotion. I love the Young Bucks. I love Kenny Omega. Those guys they go hard. Every FTR. They work so hard in the ring. The matches are fantastic. They're captivating. And they do just enough storyline stuff to keep me interested and keep me turning. But I tuned in for the wrestling.
Two more things to get you out of here. Two more things. You're wearing a Chiefs hat.
Yes, sir.
The champs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How long been a fan?
Since probably 89, 90.
Steve the Berg.
That was my guy. JJ Burton.
Yeah, JJ Burton.
Barry Word. Harvey Williams.
Yeah.
Those are my guys, man.
Yeah. Do they repeat this year?
It's going to be tough, man. It's a repeat is always tough, right? I mean, the league changes so much. It's hard being on top. It's hard to repeat. I'm hoping. I mean, Mahomes is probably the best quarterback I've ever seen, just from a natural position standpoint. The things the guy can do, his vision, his arm strength, his improvise, his ability to read a defense. He is the complete package. Like, I mean, we are just blessed to have this guy, and thank God Andy Reid and those guys, they saw something in him that nobody else saw, because, all they saw was a gunslinger down in Texas Tech. And they're like, no, this kid is special. He's different. He is completely different. So, they did more with less last year than I think anybody would have ever predicted. We're spoiled now. 5 AFC championships, 3 Super Bowls, 2 wins. I mean, as a Chiefs,
you're like Pats fans now. Careful.
Coming through the 80s and the 90s when Marty Ball, Schottenheimer, and then we had nightmares. Elvis Gerback and Steve Bono, Lynn Elliott. I mean, we've gone through so many heartbreaking years and decades of like just being right there. So this is nice. It's good to be a Chiefs fan for once.
I have Mahomes my top 5 all time. So that's how high I am.
You have him as number 1?
Top 5, not yet, because only it's sample small, smaller. Okay. But there's never been a better 5-year sample of a player in this league we've ever seen than Pat Mahomes when he combined both individual and team success.
Yeah.
No one's been better in 5 years. Not Tom Brady, not Joe Montana, no one. Period.
It's really hard. Yeah, I mean, Brady definitely is the great. I mean, he's the greatest. I mean, there's no debating that. I mean, Brady, Montana, Manning.
Yeah.
Mahomes.
I'll say this though.
That's your Rushmore probably.
But I'll say this though. For me to say Mahomes is the greatest of all time, it won't require 7 rings at all.
I don't think so either.
4.
I don't think so.
4's enough for me. 4
I don't think so either. I mean, Brady benefited from some really great, and that's not to take away anything that the guy did. He was there. I mean, the 28-3 comeback is, the greatest comeback of all time, better than the Bills one, in my opinion, because it's the Super Bowl. And having said, Patriots defenses were phenomenal. Belichick is the greatest coach that's ever lived. So, I mean, we did, what we did last year with a lukewarm, mediocre defense and, a bunch of rookie receivers. Basically, Juju was obviously there. Kelsey's the greatest tight end ever.
Arguably, I say Gronk's probably
arguably. That's fair. That's a good debate.
Yeah.
But again, the guy Mahomes is just so much different than anything we've ever seen. Like it's hard to argue that he.
Did you watch the
Did you watch
the quarterbacks on Netflix?
I did. It's great.
I love me more now watching it.
Yeah.
Make it love me more. He's just such a nice guy. He gets it. And he's dedicated, but he knows how to balance stardom from his family and all that. Great guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Guy.
Yeah, for sure. Made him look great. So
yeah.
Knock on wood, he stays healthy.
We've
already had some injuries so far in training camp, but hopefully we need a couple of those young guys to step up. I'm excited for Justin Ross. I think he's going to have a breakout year. If you're doing fantasy, he might be a sneaky pick. Richie is we got from the Giants. He's kind of fitting in. Kadarius Toney can't seem to stay healthy.
That's my team, Giants, for the record.
Oh yeah, well, hey, you know what? You might. I mean, it's tough. The NFC East is tough. Philly, Dallas, Washington. I mean,
a lot of luck last year. I would say that a lot of luck last year.
They need to let Daniel Jones cook, man. They need to let that dude throw.
Yo, you're paying him $40 million a year. You let his ass. Yeah, $40 million a year. Yeah, exactly. Take leash off, please.
No more 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Let that kid throw.
Thank you. You get it. See,
I got you. I got you,
man. Come on. One last thing. Get you out. One last thing. In basketball, you're a Mavs fan.
Mavs fan.
KC football.
How did that happen? I know, dude.
Mavs in basketball. I'm
all over the place.
First off, how long been a fan for? How long?
Been a Mavs fan?
Yeah.
About the same time, about the early 90s.
So when the Mavs were,
so the Mavs are interesting. So I adopted Dallas. Originally, it was a Utah fan. I was in Malone and Stockton. My best friend and I in high school, we played basketball, and we were Malone and Stockton. So he's like short white guy. I was kind of a bigger, and so we were Malone Stockton. That's how we played up each other. He was a good passer, and I was a good rebounder. So that's how. So I was like a Jazz fan. So my favorite college player at that time was Jamal Mashburn from Kentucky. So I was really excited because Orlando was going to draft Mashburn. I was like, this is perfect because he's going to be in Orlando. Have Shaq and Mash. It'd be great. He ended up in Dallas. So I was like, well, they got nobody to root for him. I'll root for Dallas. They're fine. I like Jamal Mashburn. I can get on board with that. Then they had Jimmy, Jason, and Jamal. We had, the 3 J's. And then, obviously Steve Nash. And then when they got Dirk and we won the title, it was super fun. So, yeah, it's weird. I know. My allegiances are kind of all over the place. I think just growing up in Florida, it's tough because the Bucks were always the Bucks. I have a basketball team other than the Magic, and when they came along, so I just had to kind of pick teams here and there. But yeah, that Jamal Mashburn was my guy. You can see him back there, Jimmy, Jason, and Jamal right there.
Yes, yeah. Oh my God,
that's an autograph photo of all 3 of them that I got.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's cool. So that was my guy. So that became my team.
That's cool, man. The Mavericks, and you stuck. And look, you stuck with it for a long time, and you were able to eventually.
Man. When they were 15 win team, they were terrible. Yeah. Like, you know what? I'm gonna ride it out. They'll be good one day. They'll be good.
Popeye Jones.
Popeye Jones.
Oh my God.
They had some bad. Roy Tarpley. They had some bad players. They had some bad teams. Sean Bradley. I mean, bless his heart, man.
Torrey, I will never forgive you. I will never forgive you for 2011, man. I'll never forgive you for 2011. Never forgive you. I'm a Heat fan. I've been a Heat fan since 1989.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'll never forget for 2011, man. But honestly, Dirk earned that one. Dirk earned that one, though. Honestly,
that was such a great team.
Yeah,
that was such a great team. That whole team, Kidd, Shawn Marion, Dirk. I mean, that was just a jet. That was a great team.
Barea.
1 to 15. Brendan Haywood, Barea. That was such a great. I mean, if anybody ever deserved to win a title, it was Dirk. I mean, the basketball god shone on that guy. 20 years, same franchise. You know, it took less money. I mean, was just humble. Yeah. That guy just deserved to win a title. And then, you know, he went up against the Heat. And obviously, you know, you had the big three and they were going to win five, not 6, not 7.
Yep.
It was that was a sweet win.
Just two.
Two. I mean, two's better than one.
That's true. You know, it is what it is. Fucking LeBron.
Get what you get.
Torrey, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Next time, GOAT debate. Yeah. Next time, GOAT debate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll be on the show again, definitely. Go ahead, plug one up. Anything you want to plug? You want to plug any blog? You want to plug Twitter?
Yeah, mostly I'm on Twitter at Torrey M Spears. That's where you find me most of the time. I love debate. I love discussion. I love conversation. So, man,
you have a home here in this podcast, then, definitely.
And I hope to join you again, brother. This was fun.
Absolutely, man. Great job as always, man.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.